Historically, in the United States, women had few civil rights. Women could not vote or serve on juries. Married women could not own property or sign contracts. Generally, they had no legal existence apart from their husbands, although widows could often own property. In 1848, the first Women's Rights Convention was held in Seneca Falls, New York, where attendees approved a Declaration of Sentiments for women's rights. Modeled on the U.S. Declaration of Independence, it stated, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal." The document went on to list injustices to women, including denying women the right to vote, while subjecting them to the laws and taxes created by men. Beginning in the 19th century, a main focus of the women's rights movement was women's suffrage, or the right to vote. Interestingly, Wyoming, while still a territory, granted women full voting rights in 1869. Other Western territories and states gave women full voting rights as well. For example, Colorado in 1893 and Idaho and Utah in 1896. Slowly, other states granted women full or partial voting rights, such as for school boards, for primaries, and municipal elections. The 19th Amendment, guaranteeing women the right to vote in all elections, was ratified nationwide in 1920, though more than a dozen states had granted women full voting rights before the amendment's passage. However, winning the right to vote did not eliminate other forms of gender inequality. Job opportunities for women were limited, even when they were well educated. During World War II, women entered the workforce in large numbers, encouraged by the government to take jobs left vacant by men who had entered the military. But after the war, most women lost those jobs to returning soldiers. 2 decades later, several federal laws advanced the rights of women. In 1963, Congress passed the Equal Pay Act, prohibiting wage discrimination based on a worker's sex and allowing women to sue employers who discriminated in pay. Civil Rights Act of 1964 banned discrimination in hiring, firing, compensation, and other conditions of employment on the basis of sex. Yet, a 2007 Supreme Court ruling in LEDBETTER v. Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company required women workers who wished to sue for pay discrimination based on the 1964 Civil Rights Act to file their suit within 6 months of the discrimination taking place. This severely limited women's rights to seek legal redress. 2 years later, during the Barack Obama administration, Congress passed the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act, which removed this time limit. A century after the 19th Amendment's passage, women still earned about 83 cents for every dollar men earned, and women faced another form of job discrimination. While some women gained prominent positions in business and other fields, many noted the existence of a glass ceiling that prevented them from gaining leadership roles in equal numbers to men. Another issue relating to civil rights for women involves Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972, which banned discrimination on the basis of sex in any education program that received federal funds. One visible change that resulted was increased opportunities for female students to participate in athletics. In the wake of Title IX, the number of female students attending college and universities, including law schools and medical schools, rose significantly. Many of these changes were sparked by the reinvigorated women's movement that emerged in the 1960s and 1970s. The National Organization for Women was founded in 1966 after the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission initially refused to enforce the ban on sex-based employment discrimination that was mandated by the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The organization urged the government to pay attention to the concerns of women, including the need for health care and pregnancy leave. The National Organization for Women also called for the passage of the Equal Rights Amendment, or the ERA, which stated, "Equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex." It had first been introduced in Congress in 1923, but for nearly 50 years never gained the required support of 2/3 of both houses of Congress. Finally, in 1972, Congress approved the amendment and sent it to the states for ratification. Ratification would require the approval of 38 states. Although many states quickly ratified the ERA, organized opposition to the amendment emerged. The amendment was sent for ratification shortly before the Supreme Court issued the Roe v. Wade ruling in 1973. This controversial ruling declared most state anti-abortion laws unconstitutional. Opponents of the ERA portrayed support for the amendment as equivalent to support for Roe v. Wade and portrayed ERA supporters as anti-family. In addition, opposition to the ERA came from those who had concerns that it would negatively affect women. For example, some feared that the ERA could deprive women of the right to alimony in the case of divorce or lead to women being drafted into the military. The ERA was ratified by 35 states by 1977, falling 3 states short. Congress extended the deadline for ratification to 1982, but no more states ratified it. In 2017 and 2018, 2 more state legislatures, Nevada and Illinois, did ratify the amendment. But even if a 38th state ratifies the amendment, passage would likely be challenged in court because the congressional deadline has been passed. Sexual harassment in the workplace has also been a major problem for women. Beginning in 1976, federal courts began recognizing sexual harassment as a form of workplace discrimination. Initially, this meant sexual harassment in the form of demanding sexual favors as a condition for being hired or promoted. In 1986, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that sexual harassment that creates a hostile work environment is also sexual discrimination. News reports of sexual harassment involving prominent people sparked the Me Too movement in the late 2010s, demonstrating that despite the court ruling and legal protections, sexual harassment remains a common problem in the American workplace.